ladies and gentlemen, we have Rob of the McDOJOLIFE in the booth today. And I'm very excited to talk to you because I've seen your videos come about. You know, like what Rob does is he exposes the fake martial artists. Some people think that you can knock people out mentally, and those people, it turns into a dangerous cult, and it can really lead to like really severe consequences sometimes, such as like some people have died, right? So it's really good what you're doing. I'm very excited to see what your method is, how you grew your page, the McDOJOLIFE page, and sort of how you're making a living off of it right now. So Rob, how are you doing today?
Well, doing awesome, man. I appreciate you having me on. I like to talk shop, so whatever, I'm down. So thank you.
Perfect. Yeah, we're coming off a great UFC 268 card. I don't know
Oh
if you
my
want
God.
to start with that.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That was, I'm trying to think back. I can't think of a better card that I've ever seen in my life. Every fight was incredible.
It is up there, man. Like I noticed it yesterday, the impact, because I was at the gym and like I've never been stopped this much by people that know I follow it and have this podcast and just asking for my opinions every single fight, including prelims. Like there's some people I know that never watch prelims, and they were like, "Did you see that guy? And did you see Pereira? I think Pereira headlined the prelims, right?"
Oh my God. All the prelims were amazing. And I think the majority ended in knockout as well, which I think was pretty cool. Like,
Yeah.
I forget the gentleman's name, but they were heavyweights and he knocked dude out with the spinning hook kick.
Chris
and
Barnett.
then
Yeah. that guy. What
That
a
was
legend.
so
He's my new
good.
favorite fighter, man. He's my new favorite guy,
He had so much energy after the fight. He was just so excited to be there. And you could tell that he really loved what he was doing. And he was still hyped from the knockout. It was cool.
Yeah.
It was cool to see.
Absolutely, man. So what's your own background in martial arts?
I'll try to make it quick. So I've been in the martial arts industry for 24 years of my life. I'm a third degree black belt in karate, a third degree black belt in something called Judo, which is a weapon system nobody has heard of. It basically just means I'm good at nunchucks. I'm a purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I'm a 6-0 amateur boxer, 4-2 amateur kickboxer. I was on an international kickboxing team for 2 years called Team Full Circle, where we traveled internationally and did martial arts and kickboxing tournaments. And I've been doing McDOJOLIFE now for around 9 years, I think. And then I've been doing martial arts business consulting for about 10 years.
That is martial arts business consulting. Okay, so you're still doing that on the side?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like I actually make the majority of my money doing this through martial arts business consulting. People always ask me, they go, "Hey, man, how do these frauds have so many students in their school?" I'm like, well, they probably learned a little bit about business. It's actually not that hard to do. So many people in the industry think making money is a bad thing, and that is a great way to be out of business very quickly. So
Yeah.
you can make money and not be a fraud. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, and there's a whole morality, like, oh, you're a sellout, like the sellouts thing. Like, come on, man. Like everybody.
Yeah,
needs to make a
you
living,
know who
right?
says people are sellouts are people who are broke.
Exactly.
You never hear
Yes.
rich people calling other people sellouts. You never hear financially successful people calling other people sellouts. You only hear people who can't afford a meal. You're such a sell. No one takes the martial arts seminar from the guy in the cardboard box. You don't walk by the
Exactly.
hobo and go, you know what? I bet you that guy is good at martial arts. No one does that.
I'm pretty sure like you've put a couple of people out of business too that are fake martial artists that are now living out of a cardboard box and still trying to recruit people, right?
Uh-huh.
So like, what were you doing before you started this page? Because so I saw. I saw some clips of your page before, like a lot of people, especially like a lot of casual fans, send me these videos because they think like half of it they think is fake or like set up and stuff. And I'm like, no, that's the whole crazy thing about it is people really genuinely believe what they're learning in those schools, and but yeah. So I saw some of those clips, and I think I saw you on you showed up on one of Brendan Schaub's podcast kind of things. I don't know what he was doing, and then you explained that this is what you make a living off of. I'm like, oh, this is the guy behind that page. Okay, I want to have him on one day, and I've been waiting, and then thought, why am I waiting? Let's just hit you up. So, but what were you doing before you started this page?
I was a martial arts instructor. So
Oh,
go
okay.
figure.
A real
Yeah,
one.
martial arts has been pretty much my entire life since I was 12 years old. I haven't really branched off and done a lot of other things, I guess you could say, in terms of hobbies. And so I really loved martial arts. From the time I started, I knew that it's what I wanted to do. And then eventually way leads to way. You become, an assistant instructor, then you become an instructor for someone else. And then eventually I opened up my own school, and I had that for about 4 years. Then it got bought out by another martial arts facility because they liked the way I was doing things. And then I worked for them for a time, and then now I do McDOJOLIFE full time. So, but you did mention something, by the way. The things that I post are not staged, unfortunately.
Yep. Yeah.
People think because they're so ridiculous and so outlandish, these people have to just be doing it as a comedy skit. But what people don't see is the hours upon hours upon hours that I put in doing research into these people to find out what they're all about. And I even go on our YouTube channel and I do deep dive breakdowns about exactly who these people are, what they're teaching, what they believe, how many students they have, where they're located, all that stuff. So anyone who still thinks that it's staged is just lazy, or they're probably just so astonished by how crazy it is that they just can't believe it. They can't fathom that people could be this actually crazy, but they are. It's a martial arts cults I deal with.
That's what it is. I mean, have you ever exposed someone who wasn't fake, or like how do you find out their martial arts credentials?
Yeah, it's not that hard. You have to remember most of these places are actual, like I said, they're actual martial artists. So they have a lineage. So that means they have an instructor before them. They have a very specific martial arts style that they teach, which usually means that they have a facility or a school, which usually means they have a website, which usually means you can find out information on them very easily because they themselves post it up. I haven't been sued ever doing this job, by the way, because I actually do the research and find out the truth about these people. So they have no legs to stand on in terms of slander or libel, because most of the things I put out, they themselves have put out into the world. They admit freely to being this crazy. It's amazing.
It's that DJ Khaled thing. You played yourself, or like
I think they definitely play themselves. Like it's weird. Like you would think that I'd run out of material by now because I've been doing it, like I said, for almost a decade. And I post someone different every day. Every once in a while I'll find like an active con artist that I think needs more light. Like for instance, like Detroit Dust, Dale Brown is like one of the bigger con artists. And he's in Detroit and he's teaching just nonsense and he's putting it online, and all these people, he controls the narrative as well on his social medias by stopping people from being able to comment, or he deletes all the negative comments. And so people see that all these people are following him. So some people assume that he must be good at what he does. What a lot of people don't understand is the reason so many people are following him is because he's a con artist and they like watching him to make fun of him. But, people like that, they need a little more spotlight. But most of the time I post new people.
And what surprises me a lot is that, especially in the West, where there's a lot of sanctioning bodies and, who run different martial arts organizations, that so many schools are allowed to exist. Like, I know you have a lot of schools. Sorry.
I want to touch on that. One of the reasons I started the page is because that's a misconception. There is no regulating body to all martial arts at all. It doesn't exist.
I mean, like for each martial art specifically?
No, even in each martial art. For instance, there are over 2,000 different versions of karate.
Oh, I didn't know that.
2,000. There are over 200 different versions of Indonesian Silat. Even within jiu-jitsu, you have a lot of different types of jiu-jitsu. Same thing with, Taekwondo. There are different factions. Same thing with Krav Maga. There are different factions. And so you would think that these things have regulatory bodies, but they don't. Maybe there are smaller organizations. Like, for instance, you have an organization which is a little larger, like the IBJJF, the International Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Federation, I do believe. And they do help in a way, but at the same time, it's like they don't control all of jiu-jitsu, and they're not the only organization, and they don't tell you the rules. They give you guidelines. They're like, it should take you about this long to get a black belt. It should take you about this long to be, good at what you're doing. It should take about. And when you're looking at martial arts in general, it's just kind of rolling the dice and what you're going to get in terms of an instructor, because you don't actually need any qualifications or certifications at all to open up a school at all. It's crazy.
So it's insane that a lot of people really worship these bogus teachers. Like, I remember when I was a kid, like one of the first things, first martial arts I did was Taekwondo, because my father thought that's, I grew up in Jordan, so they're really excelling at Taekwondo. They win medals, all the time. And the instructor, I think, got the second place in the world championship or something. So that was his credential. So like, cool. But then it allows you to, like, you really want to gain their respect, and you really want to, you look up to them because of that. But then if someone doesn't have credentials, like, what leads someone to sort of really look at them as sort of like a messiah or something?
Well, I mean, you just touched on something that I think is pretty important, which is you kind of were talking about giving respect to people based off of their martial arts credentials.
Right.
That's actually a really horrible way to put a standard on a human being. Like, think about it. We don't do that
True.
for any other job, right? So, for instance, if your barber beat the shit out of somebody like a customer, you wouldn't be like, I respect that barber. If your
Yeah.
if your mechanic hit somebody over the head multiple times with a tire iron, you wouldn't be like, man, my mechanic's good. You would base it a little bit more off of your personal interactions with them. And that's something that leads to the brainwashing. For instance, when you walk into a martial arts school, there's something quite unique about that dynamic, because you're already giving someone respect before they've ever earned it. So you're saying, oh,
Right.
they're a black belt, so they must have honor and integrity and, self-control, because that's what we've been taught over the years as children and through movies, is that that's what martial arts is about. They're just people, and so I think that that's where a lot of people fall into these cult-like mentalities, is they give all this respect up front before they actually get to know the person, before they do any research on them. There are multiple, I mean, every week I do a news story on our YouTube channel, and every week I can find a news story about a martial arts instructor who molested a child.
Yes.
I don't think that that person deserves respect because they won some world championship. They raped a kid. They don't have respect from me.
That's true.
So, yeah, like I said, so I think it's something that naturally happens when we walk into a school, is we just give that person respect, even though they haven't earned it yet.
Also because, you have to be obedient, because otherwise you don't learn, and, you have to find that respect somewhere. And I guess that's what you latch onto then, like
I mean,
the
that's
credentials.
one of the things for sure. I think that, if you're going into anything and you want to be good at anything, you automatically are going to put the teacher in a place of power over you. So that's one thing. But just because I think that someone's good at something doesn't mean I respect them. For instance, let's say somebody like Charles Manson, who was able to convince people to murder for him. I don't respect him just because he's good at that. It's the same thing with martial arts instructors. Just because you can beat my ass doesn't mean you get my respect.
Yeah. That's interesting, man, because in a way, like, I mean, you do respect the skills, because, like, you're there for that reason. You want to learn to be that good. So you only look at that. You only focus at that, and that's where the respect comes from. Whereas instead, you can also look at the overall sort of the person, right, and the things he's done. So it's kind of,
again,
it distorts your definition maybe of the word respect in a way.
There you go. Like, for instance, again, going back to another analogy, if you go to your barber, and your barber, is a heroin addict, and, he beats the shit out of women, and, he's got multiple felonies, but he cuts your hair really well. I might let him cut my hair, but I'm not going to let him come to my house. I'm not going to hang out with the dude. The dude cuts hair well. All right, cool. We all have a past, but you cut my hair good, so we'll leave it there.
Exactly.
Unfortunately, martial arts don't do that. Like, a lot of martial artists consider their instructor their mentor. It's beyond just kicking and punching and choking people. It's, oh my God, I want to be like that person. And it's why? Why? You can learn from the dude and not want to be like them. It's okay to learn from the skill that they have and not want to be like them.
Yeah, maybe there's too much of a, it goes back to I think the martial arts movies and the whole idea behind it, that there was a very spiritual idea behind martial arts too. Like, I think there's too much weight being put on that it's like a religion. A lot of people like get, feel like it's the end all be all once they get involved in it, right?
Yeah, I mean, we filmed a documentary about frauds in the martial arts industry. We're working on getting it sold now. And while we were filming, we actually interviewed a guy who is a preacher, pastor, whatever you'd like to call him. And when we interviewed him, we asked him specifically about the differences between martial arts, religion, and cults. What's the difference between a martial art, a religion, and a cult? And he was very well spoken, and he'd said it way better than me. But one of the things that stood out to me is he said the root word of culture is cult. And so if you look at any culture, it's going to be made up of a lot of different cults, and you can have a cult of anything. You can have a cult of money. You can have a cult of personality. You can have a martial arts cult. You can have a religious cult. And so what I think a lot of people mess up is they think that the only cults there can be are religious, which isn't true. You can have a cult of anything. People automatically assume that if it has anything to do with religion, it could be a cult. But they don't think about that in terms of money. They don't think about that in terms of a person and how much they listen to them. For instance, Charles Manson, he wasn't running a religion. He was running a cult, and he was a cult of personality. And so people don't think that martial arts can be a cult, but they're wrong. It can be.
It absolutely can. And I think it also goes to me back to the psychology of like when you learn a martial art, you sort of like psychologically feel like you don't have to prove yourself anymore, like because you're secure with like your skills you have, or you can defend yourself if any crazy person ever attacks you on the street, even though the first instruction people always tell you is run. But then I feel like if you use it in a wrong way, you can sort of feel invincible in situations where like, no, everybody can be beaten. You know what I mean? And it's like it affects your psychology in a way.
It's weird, man. People's ego gets the better of them a lot. What I always found fascinating is I've been all over, and I've been able to train at a lot of different martial arts schools, which is very cool. But a lot of schools will have, like, especially more traditional schools, will have something on the wall that says, this is a black belt school. I've seen that like hundreds, if not thousands of times. But then sometimes over the door, you'll see it say, leave your ego here. And it's like, well, which one is it? Like, am I leaving my ego here, or am I supposed to be this proud black belt? Like, it can't have both. And so martial arts does come with a little bit of ego. I think the difference is people who have a healthy ego understand how to turn it on and off. They know, okay, if I'm fighting you, I need an ego right now. I don't need to think that I'm going to lose. But if I'm, just training and working out with other people, it's not about who's the biggest or the baddest or who's in charge or who has this belt. It's about learning and getting better at your art.
Mm-hmm. And there's something that the regular Joe might not know is that, for example, before MMA was a legitimate sport, the UFC kind of was this freak show where they thought, okay, let's see which martial art beats which martial art, which martial art's the best. And in the end, they came to the conclusion, I guess, that mixing several things together and becoming good at those is probably the best way, right?
Back in the day, it used to be called NHB. Everybody called it NHB back then, before it became UFC, or before it became MMA.
What did that stand for?
No holds barred. So back then, when they didn't really have the rule set that we have in place now, headbutts were allowed. You can grab hair. You could hit to the groin. There's like a really famous UFC fight where the dude who played like the odd job character in Austin Powers, he like was repeatedly punched in the groin like 50 times or whatever, and that's how he lost his fight.
It would suck to have that loss on your record, nowadays.
Imagine being on someone's highlight reel and you're the guy on the ground just getting punched in the dick like over and over again.
No, exactly. But you think like, now we're at a time where, people know by now what's bullshit and what's not, do you think like the growth of the popularity of pro wrestling, especially back in, let's say, I'll go like to my childhood, let's say maybe even like 20 years ago, that then I realized like those wrestlers were really still holding on to that whole idea of like, I cannot admit that it's fake. And they were all like really pushing that narrative that it's real, even though most people knew it was fake. But nowadays you see like they sort of are, it's not that they say it, but if you get asked in an interview, they think it's a given, that people now know it's fake.
It's staged, like I'm gonna give them credit.
Yeah, I mean, like, of course he's getting slammed for real, but
but at the end of the day, everybody knows it's fixed. They already know who's gonna win, who's gonna lose beforehand, and all that good stuff. But I think that what really perpetuates the nonsense in martial arts industry is the misconceptions in the world that are pretty standard, and it's very weird. Like, you hear these terms that are just bullshit. Like, one of the biggest bullshit terms ever in martial arts is size doesn't matter. Like, how the fuck does that is the dumbest shit I've ever heard. Like, would you rather be hit by a bus or a bicycle? Like, I'd rather be hit by the bicycle. Well, that means size matters. Why does every sport martial arts competition have weight classes? Why? Like, I thought size didn't matter. No, it definitely matters. It's just not the only thing that matters. And, people always say stupid bullshit like that, and it gets perpetuated. Or another cute one is from like that movie Roadhouse. I don't know if you ever saw Roadhouse or not,
I
but
did, yeah, yeah.
they talk about like they talk about like kick him in the knee, it'll bring any man down. And then like that echoes through every trailer park in the United States. Like people are like, I just kick him in the knee. Like, no, you're not. Like, how many times in the UFC ever have we seen people just get stomped in the leg as hard as they can, and their leg just kind of moves out of the way and they keep fighting? It's like
Yeah.
these some shit's just bullshit. It's just funny.
You talk about the intangible of well, not the intangible. It's the whole fact that people forget that there's no rules in the streets. You get attacked. There's no rules, and there's weapons, and there's all that. So I think legitimate martial arts schools will tell you if you ever ask an instructor a question of what's the best martial art or what's the best thing I can do when I get attacked in the street. The first thing they'll say is run. That's just don't confront them, right? But
Well, I mean, not getting into a fight is probably the best way to avoid a fight.
Exactly.
But at the same time, what happens if the guy's
let's say if it's like a crazy person, just
no,
like
what happens
boom.
if they're faster than you?
True. Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like that's always the go-to with like knife defense, right? They're like, just run away. Well, like, what happens if he's like now you're gonna get stabbed in the back multiple times? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's a good thought, but at the end of the day, training is always good. And going to the no rules thing, a lot of guys who I guess you could say aren't really trained in the martial arts always have that as their argument against a trained martial artist. Like, there's no rules in the streets. Like, I black out and I go crazy. Like,
Yeah.
okay, well, you understand, like, the other guy who is trained has all of those techniques and all that skill and all that training, and can also bite you and can also poke you in the eye and can also hit you with whatever's closest. So it's always like a really interesting argument, like with people who basically just don't want to train, I guess you could say.
True. Yeah. No. Exactly. And I've always thought like, what if they're like through all these fake schools that you've exposed? Like, has there ever been? There must be surely a student that's ever challenged their instructor, right?
Oh yeah,
There's no way all of them, like, but do these? I mean, these people, I guess, come out with their stories, right? But it just surprises me, like, how many people really buy into this. Like, what is the reason, do you think, like, psychologically, that these people think that they actually have a force field around them, for example? Like,
it depends on the person's goal. Like, for instance, not everybody's going to martial arts to learn self-defense. I know that doesn't sound like it makes any sense, but it's true. Like, there are people out there who are joining martial arts because they want to lose weight. That's it. That's the only thing they want to do. And they don't want to go to the gym. So they heard martial arts would be fun. So why not learn some self-defense, but mostly learn how to lose weight? Or some people just want a friend. Some people just they know that people are in martial arts, that there are groups of people there, and maybe they'll make a friend. Some people want a mentor. Some people want a place to get away from their home life. Some people need an outlet for their anger. There's a million different reasons people join. And the reason that the majority of people never compete in martial arts is because most people, that's not their goal. Fighting other people isn't really their goal. Their goal is to get something else, some supplementary training for whatever it is that they want. So it's easy to think about it when you think about it like a cult, and you don't think about it like martial arts. When people join a cult, you would think, why do these people believe that aliens are going to come down and take them away to some special planet? Right? It's crazy. But when you start thinking about the dynamic of cults, it becomes easier. Once you get in, a lot of times cult leaders will try to isolate you away. And martial arts, this is no different, because what most martial arts cult leaders will do is they'll stop you from training anywhere else. They'll consider it disrespectful if you go train anywhere else. So they isolate you from the outside world. Then all of a sudden they want you to be there more. Hey, why don't you come in and help us out with kids classes? Why don't you help me assist? Now you're spending more time there. Then after that, you're spending more time being indoctrinated by that instructor. Why don't we do some private lessons and I'll help you get up to your black belt quicker? Right. Next thing you know, these are your friends. This is your hobby. This is your life. And what happens when you get hit with this confrontational moment where you have to make a decision? Do I go against the bullshit and lose my friends, my family, my mentor, and my hobby that I've spent years working with? Or do I speak out and then start my life all over again based around something else? Most people can't take that shock in their life. So it's easier for them to go with it than it is for them to speak out.
Right. And then they're probably like, if they're not competing as well, like they might not, of course, the belts don't ever hold any merit, but they like the idea that they can probably tell people, hey, I'm a BJJ black belt. Nobody will ever test you. You don't have to test yourself against these people. You can just claim it. You know,
Yeah, they always
it
have
doesn't
the
mean you have the
excuse.
skills, but yeah, yeah,
They're like, I'd kill you. I don't want to show you anything because I'd hurt you too
like
bad and
the
stuff like
Walmart
that.
guy who
Like,
trained
bitch, you
Conor
know, you
McGregor
could
in
just
Chuck
like,
Liddell.
you could show me without killing me, right? Like, if you're that good, you could not kill me, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Don't squeeze that hard and just show me how you get me there. Exactly. Do you remember the first video you ever posted on like the McDojo life? And
Well, I don't.
also, yeah.
I remember when I first started McDOJOLIFE, it was actually on Facebook. And I used to do these long essay type, I guess you could say, diatribes on Facebook where I would do deep dives. I realized what I was doing at that point, though, because I wasn't getting a lot of interaction, was I was saying too much. And so
Mm,
nobody had anything else to add because I had already said it all. And then somewhere along the line, I was just like, let's just post this video. I think it was a day where I just wasn't able to do a whole thing. And I just posted some funny video. And then it got more likes, more views, more shares, stuff like that. And I noticed I was like, well, maybe if I say less, put it out there, and then let people have the conversation, maybe that'll grow. And that's been the key. Like,
mm.
don't say much, put it out there and let people have their own conversations about it.
That's a good key for just content pages in general, where people always say like, how do I grow and how do I how do I increase my engagement? I mean, of course, sometimes you have to play stupid in a way. Like that's what the core theory of it, I guess. It's like don't explain things, is more like give people the space to argue and give their own opinions and stuff.
Yeah, I mean,
You know.
interacting with your audience is always good. Like I was telling you before we started, I always said I do every show I ever been asked to do, and I always will. And I try to answer every direct message. So, in terms of like, I guess you could say if this was a martial arts business, which is more my forte, your goal would be retention. You have
Yep.
lead generation and you have retention. So, lead generation for a martial arts school is when you get a person who's never trained or a person who's looking for a school, and they go into your school for the first time for a trial class. Well, that's the equivalent of somebody looking at your very first video on your page. That video, that description, and how you interact with your fans is going to dictate whether or not that person is going to stay on your page. And then
Exactly.
after that, retention is the ability to keep that audience for a longer period of time. You won't keep everyone forever. That's a
Yeah.
fantasy, right? But your goal is to have more lead generation than you have a fallout or fall off from people who are leaving your page. So
For
if you're
sure.
constantly
Yeah.
working to interact with people and you're constantly reaching out and connecting to individuals and taking the time to speak with them, your audience will naturally grow because you have less people leaving you, which I think a lot of people they fuck up because they won't answer any direct messages. They won't do
Mm.
anybody's shows. It's like, you only have 10,000 followers. Like, you're not that busy, I promise you.
Yeah.
And, but then they get this like holier than thou thought. Like, look, we're just people and
Hmm.
we're followed by other people and we follow other people. The only difference is that we're producing something for people to be entertained or to learn or to follow. And so if we're going to do that, why not take the extra step to get to know your audience? Because then that will actually
Hmm.
guide your content as well. If your audience hates what you're doing and they let you know that, you should probably stop doing that.
And that's why I noticed, like, for us, for my page especially, it started growing. Like, I really started taking it seriously when the lockdown happened last year somewhere, and we started really promoting like athletes, a smaller also artists and stuff like that. And it's the ones that don't have that following or on their way up and coming, that sort of give you the best fan base, because they're always their friends and family really want to support them in this come up, and they all start following you and stuff, rather than promoting big names or like posting big names already that already have a big name. They're like, of course people are going to post them. You know what I mean? Like you sort of create something. They find it special, like you interacting with those fans. They feel appreciated in a way, because it's a big page interacting with a smaller person. That whole psychology, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
think if you look at the history of social media as well, there's ebbs and flows. For
Yeah.
instance, the first like 10% of people to start a social media or to hop in on a social media are the ones who actually make it happen. So like if you look at TikTok, the first like I guess you could say out of 100% of people, the first 10% were like, "Hey, let's try TikTok out."
Yeah.
Typically, the people who start on a social media platform are the first ones to get there. are usually happy to be there. They wanted to be there. They want to help create and build and share. And so when
Yeah.
you first looked at TikTok ads back in the day, it was all happy. Everyone was dancing, or they're singing, or they're enjoying life. But
Yeah.
then look at how Facebook worked. When Facebook first started, it was only for college kids. It was very exclusive, and people loved to be a part of that exclusive group. But
Mhm.
then after what, like, let's say 10 years later, everybody started kind of moving off of Facebook and onto newer social media platforms, because then you have that other 90% people forget about.
Yeah.
That other 90%, the majority of people are going to be in that, okay, well, it's already started. It's already a thing. It's starting to become popular. But now that it's popular, now I'll join, because
Mhm.
now it's popular. But then eventually what you're left with is that last little percentage of people who are just cynical. They don't want to be a part of social media. They hate social media. The only reason they're doing it is because their grandkids on it, and that's the only way they can talk.
For
And so
stalking
then,
reasons. Yeah.
exactly, then you get the toxicity to come in.
Mhm.
So you can see it in YouTube, by the way. People will make YouTube accounts simply to just talk bad about other people. It doesn't start that way. It becomes that because it's getting older. And so what happens is people are always looking for the hotter, newer thing. If you really want to be successful at social media, make sure you're constantly updating with the times. Make sure you're constantly changing. Make sure you're on multiple platforms. But at the same time, make sure that first 10% mentality is you. You're happy to be there. You like engaging with your fans.
Mhm.
If people you don't like start talking shit rather than talking shit back, block them. Just block them. They are toxic. You do not
Yeah.
need that. You have nobody to answer to. There's no need. And people who think that being blocked is a victory are dicks. They are douchebags. Those are the people
Yeah.
who are
Yeah.
purposely trying to fuck with you just
That
to
was our
get a
goal.
rise.
Yeah. Of
Yeah,
course.
block them. Fuck them.
So do you get a lot of hate from non-fake instructors? Like
Of
who?
course.
What kind of hate do you get? Like, yeah, that's crazy because there's so many. You can find the funniest cat video and find hate comments on it, right? So it's like there's always gonna be whatever you do. There's gonna be haters. I think that's what people have to understand. But what kind of message do you get like from these other people that aren't part of these cults?
I mean, and most of the time it's just people who don't truly understand martial arts. And so they feel like, probably within their own inner circle of friends, that they probably are the martial arts guy because they like it, but they've never really trained. And
Mhm.
so, they feel like, okay, well, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. It's like, well, maybe we just have different opinions. And I think that we're in a time right now where
Yeah.
when people have a different opinion than you, it's so much easier to ostracize them and to like point and make fun than it is to actually have an open dialogue or conversation.
Yeah.
Um, when I was growing up, you had shows like Full House, Family Matters, stuff like that, which were shows that were all about life lessons and family and togetherness. And nowadays, you don't really get that. And I think that that kind of spills over because
It's true.
most of the time, kids now are growing up in the internet age, and they're growing up on comment sections in videos where all they see is hate. And so it becomes so
Yes.
much easier for them to just go, you know what, I'll just hate too, because that's what other people are doing, than have an adult conversation about why it's okay not to agree with each other. It's okay not to agree. There are people that are friends of mine that I've known for years, decades. We don't agree on everything. Who gives
Th-
a shit? It's okay not to agree on 100% of everything. That's called being human.
those are the yeah. It's the mob mentality, but those are the best conversations. Those are the best conversations to have. I mean, because I love to talk to people that have differing point of views, as long as they respect mine, right? But this is
Yeah.
what you're seeing with like I don't want to like segue into this, but like the vaccination conversation, right? Like now, if someone for me like it took me I took my time with taking the vaccine because I already had COVID. Right,
Mm.
there's no reason for me. I'm for it. I took it and everything. But then initially, when someone asks you the question, "Have you been vaccinated yet?" There's this whole shock of like if you haven't done it yet, like as if and you're instantly put in the anti-vax box, right? But that happens with everything. It's with like political conversations too. Trump, like Donald Trump had some good things too about him, right? It wasn't all negative. But as soon as someone says Trump, they're
Mm.
associated with every single ideology that he has. You know,
People are just weird, man. Like
it's
when it comes to like stuff like that, when I grew up in the South. I'm from Florida. And so my mom she had a rule, and it's a rule that I typically stick with. She said, there's three things you don't talk to strangers about. You don't talk to strangers about religion, politics, or money. She goes, don't talk to strangers about that because it'll always equal an argument because you're never going to agree on those things.
Yes.
And so when I grew up, first of all, like who was fucking who and how they fucked was none of my business. And now it's publicized. Like everybody, oh my God, this person's having sex. Who gives a shit? That's their private thing. The same thing with like the vaccination stuff. It's like, you know, you can be open and respectful and have an honest conversation with another human being without turning them into the devil, you know, like they just have a different opinion than you.
But
you
then,
know,
it'll only polarize the world even more if people don't dare to admit what they voted on. Like here we have in the Netherlands, we have our political system. You have like so many different, like depending on how many votes you get certain seats in the parliament, and there's like 25, maybe even 30 parties, you know, and there's all these other small parties and everything. So everyone's voice is somewhat represented, right? We think we live in a very democratic sort of or a very, let's say, what is it? Like a liberal society. But and the more people, I don't know anyone who admits openly, at least, to voting for the extreme left, the extreme right wing party. But they keep gaining more and more power every single election. It's because I think they're getting ostracized so much. Like, it's such a stigma to, like, if we could just have a conversation with these people openly, I think we get a lot closer to a consensus, right? To true democracy in that sense. You know,
well, not every conversation has to be an argument either. And I think that when you're typing things out online, specifically, that you don't know that person's tonality, you don't know their emphasis, you don't know how they're trying to put that across. And so what we typically do when we're reading things online is we read them how we feel. So if we feel like we're being attacked, we read every message as if it's an attack. If we feel like we're having a good, healthy dialogue, then we read it that way. So like, if I were, for instance, it's the old barbershop thing where if you're like hanging out in an old like barbershop in New York and people are like, man, fuck you. No one treats that like a diss. You're joking. You're dicking around. But if I were to write that and the person was having a bad day and they read it, they'd be like, oh my God, fuck me. No, fuck you. It's like, dude, relax. Like if you were cool with it the other day, but you're not cool with it now, that's just your mood. You know, it's like, relax, calm that shit down. I personally love talking about like shit like, you know, all the weird things that are hot topics for people to discuss, because I think that you can have a happy medium. You can agree to disagree. Be like, all right, well, I don't agree. All right, cool. End of conversation. We move on with life. You know,
like, you're still the same person to me. I mean, like, if it's, unless it's like really, anyway, as I can say, it's funny that because like the last guest I had on, it was Jenny Savage, was a bare knuckle boxer, and the way we have a really good relationship now, because like months ago, before like when we first connected, I responded to a story of hers, and she thought I was attacking her because she took it as like she thought I was being sarcastic, but I was being serious about a certain comment, right? And we laughed about it, and that like I thought that was really cool. Like that made us even closer, and like shit, you know, we got off on the wrong foot, but that shows that like it's one of those, and like that can happen. And something else I want to touch upon, like today's society, like the internet society and the internet culture, and these kids living on the comments these days, like you see that a lot with like certain rappers or certain like artists when they die, pass away, and the messages you see on those comment sections are all jokey, like, oh wait, get this guy, like go revive the guy, or they have the video game terms, you know. Because I feel like they've been living on these screens for so long, they forget that these people are real people. They get like stuck into the whole like this person is on my screen, so it must be like a sitcom or a movie. Like they disassociate in that way.
Well, people forget like YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and whatever other social media. Those aren't places. That's not a real thing. Yep, it's a fantasy. When you're online, that's your avatar. Like it has a word, you know, there's a word for it. Like that's not you. Like, and a lot of times people who are completely pleasant in real life and you would probably hang out with, when they're online, they're assholes because that's their therapy. They don't understand how to communicate with the outside world well. So what they do is rather than talking with their boss about their frustration, they go online and they find a target and they go, you know what, fuck you, and they get all that
Yeah.
that venom out,
Yeah.
so that way they don't go back to work and shoot the fucking place up. It's like if people would just learn to communicate with other people outside of the screen, like, or face to face, or having conversations, I think the world would be a better place.
Absolutely. So I'm gonna take it back to your page as well. When is it? Was there any specific moment where you thought, "Oh, I have something here. Like this is I can make a living off. Like I can make earn some income on this page too, and I should push it. I should spend more time on it."
Um, I I guess I had a couple moments. Like the first one, we actually did an experiment that was like the #1 viewed thing on Reddit at one time, which is really fucking cool.
Oh yeah.
I had I was teaching martial arts at the time, and so I was also running McDOJOLIFE, and McDOJOLIFE, what it was doing okay. I think it had like maybe 5,000 followers, maybe even 10 or something like that on Facebook. It was doing all right. And then somebody who was an acquaintance of mine back in the day, years ago, he was on my actual Facebook page, and I was advertising a women's self-defense seminar, and he was talking shit. And I thought maybe he was joking because he was like a stand-up comedian. He was just starting to do that. And so I was like, hey, man, I sent him a direct message. I was like, hey, if you could do me a favor, like you're talking down to all these women who are taking my class, I'd really appreciate it if you didn't do that. If you're joking, I get it. It's funny, haha. But like, if you could stop, I'd appreciate it, because that's my actual job. That's where my money comes from. You're fucking with it. And then he went on to tell me he was dead serious. He was like, he didn't think that any women should ever learn self-defense. He thought, and this was a private conversation. This wasn't like doing it just to be a public douche. He was talking directly.
Yeah, then you
to
know
me.
it's real.
Yeah, for sure. And I was like, oh my God, this guy really thinks that like women shouldn't learn self-defense. And I was like, why not? He goes, any person who's actually teaching women self-defense should be ashamed of themselves, because there's no way that a woman could ever beat a man.
Oh, no, I was attacking you personally.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, well, I disagree. But I go, how about this? How about put your money where your mouth is? I said, I'll put up $2,000 of my own money, and you could spar with a female. I'll find one, and you guys can spar, and I guarantee you she beats your ass. I go, if you win, I'm going to give you $2,000. And if you lose, she gets $2,000. I go, it's that simple. And then, we kept talking. It wound up being I did find someone. She did wind up beating his ass twice, on video. And then, but when that build up to that, these conversations that we were having, I posted a call to action on my McDojo page. I was like, $2,000 to anyone who will come out and actually spar this dude. And my inbox blows up. Now, most of the people who were responding already had MMA contracts, so they couldn't legally do it. Yeah. But there were definitely some people that were takers. I wound up getting one, and she beat his ass. She beat his ass twice.
What was her name? Because I've seen a video like that.
Let's see here. I'm trying to
see if that's the video I saw.
I'll find it. Tara LaRosa. Sorry. So Tara LaRosa, she beat his ass. It was pretty funny because he was talking all this like, oh well, I'm bigger and stronger and my cardio's better, and she whooped him. Yeah. It was just a shit show, but it wound up being like really popular, and I had to jump through all kinds of legal hoops. I got subpoenaed from the state athletic commission.
Oh, God.
It was like I could wipe my ass with it because it didn't go through. But at the end of the day, like then Rogan started talking about us on his show, and that was really cool. And now other people were talking about it on their shows. And I guess the moment I really realized that I was going to be able to do this for a living was the moment I kind of started looking into how to make money online. And I was like looking at the numbers, and I was like, talked to a friend of mine who's a business consultant as well. And he was like, look, dude, this is a thing. You could actually do something here. Made a business plan and just burned the ships. I was like, fuck it. This is what I'm doing for a living now.
It's all about eyeballs. I mean, if you got eyeballs, there's always a way to make money. If people want to associate with you, they want to link their brand to you, right? So
for sure.
That's the simple way of saying it, right? So I mean, you said you were a women's self-defense instructor too, but I've heard you're also very critical of self-defense instructors, right? Women's self-defense classes.
No, I think I'm critical of when people say that you're going to learn how to defend yourself in 2 days. That's bullshit. What a women's self-defense seminar should be is an introductory class to learning how to continue to train in martial arts. If anyone is telling you they have the secret technique that you can learn how to defend yourself in 2 days, 1 day, 4 hours, 6 hours, they're lying to you. If you take a women's self-defense seminar and you use that as an introductory class and you say, hey, we're glad that you're able to make it here. We're glad you learned a few things. But what you should be doing now is you should be taking this and continuing your education in the martial arts and learning how to defend yourself over a long period of time. Then you'll actually be able to defend yourself better. That's a lot different than these get quick, become a masterful fighter in 3 days, death touch bullshit. It's just a fantasy.
5-minute abs kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, yeah, I've tried those. They didn't work, right? But when you're a kid and you're like, oh, let me see if this works. But then you figure out, like, once you've done it, you figure out it doesn't work. So I don't know why people keep falling for it.
Like, fuck, I did the 5 minutes, man. Where are the abs?
Yeah. It's similar with, actually, like, it was gonna go back because, like, because I did Taekwondo, I did boxing, I still do boxing, but like the Taekwondo, I was put in it because back in like my high school, it was such an animal house, that high school, man. It was just like, I don't know how it was for you, but there was one period of time where there was just so many fights happening in class and in school where my parents were like, you know what, we're going to put you, learn how to defend yourself. But then you realize after a while of Taekwondo that where you think that what you know is helpful in those fighting situations, that no, it is not everything, because I've been attacked and then I was taken down or they hold me. I'm like, no, this is not supposed to happen. Like this is not what I learned. So even in real martial arts, like specific martial arts you do that are limited skill set, limited rule sets, you figure out eventually that this is not what helps you, defend yourself in real fight situations, right? Mm. So why do these people in these fake martial arts schools still hold on to, like, you said, like, there was the whole worship thing, the whole cult-like behavior thing? Like, what makes them think that they can survive these situations? Like, some of these people think they can survive these situations still.
Well, there's an interesting thing where you lie to yourself long enough, you actually think it's the truth. We do it all the time, like you'll have a memory and you're like, you remember that one time you like did this one thing and that was awesome. And then the other person was like, it didn't really go like that. This is actually what happened. But sometimes our memory does that. It's the Mandela Effect. I don't know if you ever heard of that or not.
I haven't.
So it's kind of like the Berenstain Bears, right? It's an old kids book, but everyone remembers it as Berenstain Bears. Or mass delusion is a thing, like where people will think like, oh, this happened. Like, for instance, quotes from movies where everyone will remember the quote exactly said like this, but it wasn't. It was said completely different. Well, it's the same thing with a lie. If you continue to tell yourself a lie enough, it will eventually become your truth. It might not be the truth, but in your head, you can't be convinced otherwise. And so that's what happens with a lot of these instructors, is they tell this lie for a living. And and it may have very much started off as an innocent lie that grew and grew and grew into this major thing. You have guys like George Dillman, who believes he can knock people out with his chi, or you can hit 3 pressure points and knock anyone out. Like, that kind of stuff is fantasy, but in his head, he's so deluded from the lie that he really believes it. Would he ever actually do it? No, because I think in the back of his mind, he still is aware that there's a chance this might not work. And so rather than being exposed in the lie, it's so much easier for him to just say, nah, I don't want to fight you because I'll hurt you or I'll kill you or it's too dangerous. Those kind of things pop up a lot.
Is that the same guy from that video where the woman runs at him on the beach, one of his teachers, and then she slams and gets knocked out, like slams into some guy?
No, that's called that cult is called Blue Bamboo. Oh, sorry, so, Yellow Bamboo. I apologize. That's
the ones that believe in the force fields you can't enter.
Yeah. I mean, but there's all kinds of stuff like that. Indonesia, it's so rampant. I saw a kid slit his throat, an 8-year-old child slit his throat and kill himself because he believed that he couldn't be cut. He wasn't aware that it was a parlor trick. I saw it was like a group of like 8 or 9 kids get run over by a truck and one of them died while hundreds of people watched because they have this mass delusion that they really believe this ingrained Tenaga Dalam, which means inner power, that's a real thing. And it's so widespread that a lot of people believe it, the majority. There are now people in Indonesia who are speaking out against it, but that it's already been going on for so long. It's ingrained in the culture.
That's a good segue, because I was going to go into like, what is one of these schools of thought that you were like following, and once you started getting into that rabbit hole more and more, you started finding out like this is way deeper than I thought, and it's getting so dangerous that it's actually life-threatening to many people.
I didn't realize how many pedophiles were in the martial arts industry until I started looking. I don't think that a lot of people even realize that a lot of pedophiles are still operating martial arts schools today. There's a guy named David Arnbeck. He molested a 15-year-old girl in his house. And she, obviously she was staying over for a sleepover with his daughter, but he wound up molesting her. He pled guilty in court, took the guilty plea. And then he still runs 3 martial arts schools today called Warriors Cove. What blows my mind is the fact that people just kind of seem to ignore it. He even made a website called davidarnbeck.com, where in the website, he himself admits to taking the guilty plea. It's what blows my mind is that people don't do the research, or I didn't understand that Indonesian culture was so ingrained in magic and mysticism and how bad that can be. I wasn't aware that I wouldn't run out of content by now. I was like, for sure, like 2 years in, I was like, I'm going to run out of shit, but I never do. It's a weird thing to like basically call out these frauds. And then every day you're waking up going, maybe I won't have anything to post today. And then you have like a surplus of hundreds of videos. You're like, well, fuck, I guess I still got stuff to post.
And then you're contemplating like, should I be happy about this or not? Like on the one hand, I need content. On the other hand, like it's sad that I have content. Yeah. But
like I could just do like I'd love to do videos about like how to help martial arts schools and how to help your school grow and how to get you more students. But it's like I didn't start the page for that. I started the page to call out these frauds, and now they seem to be never ending. And I really wish they would, so I could do the other shit that I like to do. But I mean, I'm just trying to call them out. It feels like the right thing to do, so people don't get hurt or fall trapped or get molested, shit like that.
Yeah, because it reminded me like when recently those articles started coming out, especially in the jiu-jitsu scene, of like all these molestations and those grooming stories, right? That you have really reminded me of the Catholic churches. And I know you've touched upon this before as well. But like, does it? I mean, I guess it goes back to the whole idea of when the martial arts ideology or something becomes such a religious thing. Like it's the same thing as people who become obsessed with religion.
Well, you want to hear something really creepy? So in our documentary, we were trying to look into why the similarities and the differences between religion and martial arts and cults. So we talked about that a lot. And so we touched on the Catholic Church very specifically because I've been to Catholic Mass. So I didn't want to talk about something that was out of my wheelhouse. And so I looked at Catholic Mass and I started comparing Catholic Mass to how you handle a martial arts class. And they are almost verbatim identical, So check this out. When you first walk into a martial arts school, you either bow at the door or you bow at the mat, sometimes both, depending on the school. When you walk into a Catholic Mass, again, there's this strange duality here where sometimes there's a bowl of holy water and you kind of, I guess you could say, anoint yourself before you walk forward. But also you could do that before you go into the pew, take a knee, do the same thing. So it's very similar to martial arts. In a Catholic Mass, everyone's sitting on one side of the room, and the one person who's teaching or lecturing you in religion is on the other, giving his sermon. Well, in martial arts, everyone's on one side of the room, the instructor's on the other side of the room teaching class. Behind the preacher in a Catholic Mass, there's usually a statue, a painting, or a stained glass of Jesus Christ. In a martial arts school, behind the instructor is usually a picture of the master who came before. What do you do whenever you start a martial arts class? You typically bow to that picture. It's paying respects. What do you do before a Catholic Mass? You typically have some sort of a ceremony paying respect to Jesus Christ. What happens in the middle of a Catholic Mass sermon? Everyone stands up, peace be with you. You shake each other's hands. You start introducing yourself to each other. What do you do at the end of a martial arts class? Everyone ends. You start shaking each other's hands. It is almost identical to how a Catholic Mass operates. So the only difference that separates religion, martial arts, and a cult is the intent of the leader. The intent of the leader in a martial arts class should be to teach you self-defense. That's it. The intent of the person who is in charge of a Catholic Mass or a religious ceremony is to teach you about religion, right? The intent of the cult leader is to use any means necessary to take advantage of you for their own personal gain. You could have a religious cult simply because the person in charge is trying to take advantage of you for their own gain. Same thing with a martial arts school. So other than that, they're almost identical.
That is true. So it's identical. The only thing, the difference is the intent of
That's it.
the cult leader or the leader. Listen, not cult.
That's
They're
it.
not all
That's the
cult
only
leaders.
difference. And that's
That is
scary
nuts.
because it would be very
Yeah.
difficult to see and spot. We would
Yeah.
think it would be easy, but when we talk to psychologists during the documentary, the psychologists told us that the people who are most likely to fall victim of cults are people who are very well-to-do, people who have money, people who are well-educated, and people who never think they'll fall victim of a cult. Those are the 3 kinds of people who are most likely going to fall victim of a cult.
Maybe because you're so convinced you're not going to fall for it that eventually you're in it. You're like, you don't think about it.
Exactly.
You're like,
well,
I would have never fell for it.
People who don't burn their hand
But it's
on
part
hot
of addiction,
stoves,
Larry. It's similar to like addiction in a way, where you don't admit to
guess.
yourself that you're addicted, right? Until
Exactly.
you're deep
That's
in
the
it.
only way
Yeah.
to really get out of a cult, is
Yeah.
you have to want yourself to get out. But when it comes down to
Yeah.
like the people who don't burn their hands on hot stoves are people who have already burned their hands before. The people who don't fall off of buildings are the people who understand the safety protocols and go, you know what? If I don't follow this safety protocol, I might fall off the damn building. I'm not going to go on the other side of this handrail because it's there for a reason. The
Yeah.
people who are rich are people who are more well-to-do or wealthy. They have expendable income to give to the cult. People who are poor don't typically get involved in cults because they can't afford it,
Yeah.
And then people who are well-educated, the reason they fall victim is simply because they've spent their entire life in education. They've gone and they've been well-educated. And then when it comes down to more higher learning or higher education, typically what they wind up doing is learning about themselves. They go to self-help seminars. They go to business seminars. They go to seminars to make themselves better. And that's where gurus tend to lie, is in the self-help world. So it's not that hard and far-fetched.
Yeah, I guess people don't have money to like do their research more about what they're spending their money on. Whereas if you have a lot of money, you just throw it at stuff in a way too. And it gets very dangerous, especially when I love that you touched upon the point of cultures that are very much ingrained in the spiritual and the divine. Like, because where I grew up in the Middle East, it's very different than here. I don't want to make it a religious, I'm not attacking religions or anything in that way, but there's a lot of people that get so ingrained in like even the like I would say, Islam is the big dominant religion right there. There's so many people that are so deep in it that they actually genuinely would believe that, for example, that even if they just sit around and do nothing, that wealth is going to come to them and stuff because they're that they believe so much. For the same reason that some people might think, if I jump off this building, I'm going to get saved. I'm never going to die because I'm that religious. Like there's this very divine. There's this obsession with the divine in many religions around the world that becomes that runs their life. They actually think they have that safety net around them. And I think in those cultures, perhaps you're more susceptible to falling for these fake teachings.
Yeah, it's a shame, because there can be so many good things that come out of religion, the wanting to help the needy, the need to do for others and things like that are great, but then you have people out there who take advantage of those things and twist the words of whatever particular book that you read for your particular God. Mm-hmm. And then they take that and they go, well, I can take advantage of people here. Just to hop off because I love movies, but if you think about like there's a movie called Book of Eli.
Yeah, I know.
And that entire book, that entire movie is about power through the Bible. Mm-hmm. Being able to have the only Bible in existence and being able to use that to manipulate and con and defraud people. That's what that entire movie is about, because the only person who's really looking for that book is the bad guy, but True. The one person who's trying to get the book to the right people isn't trying to share it with everyone. He's trying to keep that tighter to his chest. He's not spreading it throughout the world. He's just sharing little fables here and there with people that he meets along the way. And people who pay attention and they really listen to the things that he has to say, they learn something and they become better for it. But then the people who are trying to use it to manipulate people, that happens now. People use that for their own evil doings all the fucking time. And to me personally, I'm not a religious dude. I can see the good things in it. I can see the bad things in it. But I guess I'm one of those people where I like tangibles. Mm-hmm. And I think faith is something that we have the luxury of having. Like you have the luxury of having faith. When you're in a dire situation, like and you're about to die or you're being held up, or you're in a foxhole or any of these things, and something bad's about to happen, you become real religious real fucking fast, even if you aren't religious.
Yeah.
I
was thinking of like this, the whole it's the mental side of it is great. I think believing the afterlife for a lot of people is a good, it's a positive way to think about things in a way that makes you less scared of dying, makes you cope with grief maybe very well, knowing that believing that your loved ones are in a better place, the ones who've passed on.
I wish I believed it. I do. I really do. Like, I wish I believed in an
I'm
afterlife.
agnostic, so I believe in something, and I hope.
Yeah, there you go.
I hope I genuinely believe it. Right? I'm not sure if I genuinely believe it. That's the thing. Yeah.
Well, I'm agnostic as well, but I've always believed that I don't believe in God, but I hope he believes in me, is my personal quote. Yeah. So, like, if I don't believe in him and he still exists, hopefully he still gives a fuck about me in some way, Yeah, that's all I care.
Hopefully I'm not one of those sinners that didn't believe enough and I'm going to hell now.
You get to the pearly gates and he's like, not enough faith. Hit the bricks.
You missed it by 1 point. God.
Oh, fuck.
It's like those UFC judges, Like, no, I did enough. Come on.
I'm going to give this one a 10-7 round. Fuck.
Yeah. But I didn't even get taken down. Yeah, man. All right. Do you have last question? Do you have an end goal in mind with this page? Like, when do you really think you really made an impact, or do you think you already did?
I would say I'll put it this way. I know I've made an impact simply because of how many messages I get with people's really deep stories that they've told me about how the page has helped them in one way or another. One guy even made a page specifically because he had depression. And he was watching these fake martial artists. It made him laugh so much that he wound up starting his own page, and it kind of gave him a new lot on life and really made him enjoy it. So that was cool. People who have gotten out of martial arts schools, people who have left schools because they found out about instructors, schools that have gotten closed down. So I know it makes an impact, but I don't think personally it will ever be enough. Because there's always one more person you can help. There's always one more incident that you could have covered. You could have gotten to the story earlier. You could have helped someone. You could have found out that this dude was a pedophile before he molested someone else. Like, it almost comes with more of a weight than it does anything else, because I feel obligated to do better. So I don't think it'll ever be enough. But at the end of the day, I know it makes an impact, so it keeps me going.
So I guess it's a whole, as long as this trend lives on, of people maybe starting pages and as a team and collective exposing more and more of these institutions or whatever you want to call it, then that's already a win.
Yeah, man. I think at this point it's got to be life's work. Like, I don't think I necessarily chose it because I kind of came about it so casually. But I think maybe in a way, I don't necessarily believe in fate, but I think that maybe it chose me, and it's something that I'm doing now. It's naturally evolved into what it is, and I'm not going to stop because they're not going to stop. So fuck them.
Yes. That's a good note to end on then. Hey, man, thanks so much for coming on. Is there any projects you're working on now that you want to promote, or anything you want to share?
Yeah, for sure, man. Well, hopefully everybody can keep an eye out for our documentary. We filmed a martial arts documentary about frauds in the martial arts industry. We're looking to make it a 5-part series, and we're trying real hard to get it on Netflix. So if anybody, if whenever that comes around, you can keep an eye out, because we're working hard to try to get that out there. And then writing a book about all the crazy shit that I've seen throughout the martial arts industry throughout my years. And hopefully over time, more people will follow our YouTube, so I can do better YouTube content. So.
Awesome. Good, man. Well, good job, man. Keep it up. I'll be following. I'll be sharing everything. So have a great day, man.
Appreciate you.